Let me tell you something I have never forgotten. I was 25 years old, working a job that paid just enough to keep me from quitting and not enough to make me feel alive. I had dreams. Everybody has dreams. But my dreams were getting smaller. Not all at once. Slowly. The way a fire shrinks when you stop feeding it. And one evening, a man I respected looked at me and said something that changed the direction of my life. He did not give me a new strategy. He did not hand me a book. He simply said, look at the 5 people you spend the most time with. That is your future. I want you to stop right now, not at the end of this message. Right now, and ask yourself one question. Who are the 5 people closest to you? Because here is what most people do not understand. They have heard the idea. They can quote it at a dinner party. They nod when they hear it, but they have never, not once, sat down and truly reckoned with what it means, what it costs, what it demands. This is not a motivational quote. This is a law as certain as gravity. And today I am going to decode it completely because the people around you are not just influencing your mood. They are quietly, invisibly, and relentlessly deciding your future. I want to begin with a simple observation about nature. When you plant a seed, you do not choose the soil halfway. You do not say, well, this patch of ground is mostly good. You know, every farmer knows that the quality of the soil determines the quality of the harvest. You can have the finest seed in the world, but if you bury it in poor soil, surrounded by weeds and stones, it will struggle. It may survive, but it will never thrive. You are the seed, and the people around you are the soil. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. I am not so easily influenced. I am my own person. I make my own choices. And I respect that. That is the right instinct. But let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that when you spend a week with optimistic people, you come home feeling lighter? Have you ever returned from a weekend with negative, complaining people and felt heavier than when you left, even if nothing bad happened to you personally? That is not coincidence. Then that is the law. The law of averages is one of the most powerful forces operating in your life right now. It does not care about your intentions. It does not care about your ambitions. It simply works. Constantly, quietly, the way the tide works, whether you are watching it or not. Here is what I have observed across decades of study and conversation with some of the most successful people in the world. The people who rise, the ones who genuinely build something meaningful, they take this law seriously before they have any evidence it is working. They audit their associations the way a good accountant audits a ledger, ruthlessly, honestly, without sentimentality. And the people who stay stuck, they treat this idea as a nice thought, something to agree with and then forget by Tuesday. Easy to do and easy not to do. That is the formula for failure. Not dramatic collapse, but the slow, comfortable erosion of your potential because you never made the hard decisions about who deserves a permanent seat at the table of your life. The first step is understanding that this is a law, not a suggestion, a law. And laws do not bend for good intentions. When I say you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, I want you to understand what average actually means. Because most people hear that word and think only about income. They think, oh, I need richer friends. And while income is part of it, and we will talk about that, it is the smallest part. Average means your thinking is averaged. Your ambition is averaged. Your standards are averaged. Your language is averaged. Your expectations of what is possible are averaged. Your tolerance for mediocrity is averaged. Let me give you a picture. Imagine a thermometer in a room. The thermometer does not decide the temperature. It simply reflects it. That is what most people are. Thermostats of their environment. They rise and fall with the room they are in. They become the average temperature of the 5 people closest to them. The goal is not to be a thermometer. The goal is to be a thermostat, someone who sets the temperature rather than merely reflecting it. But here is the sobering truth. Even the strongest thermostat has limits. Even the most disciplined, most intentional person is shaped by their environment more than they want to admit. I have seen this play out in the most tangible ways. I have spoken to men who told me, I used to read books. I used to have goals. But slowly I stopped. I did not notice it happening. And when I asked them what changed, they could not always name a single dramatic event. What changed was the company they kept, the conversations they had every day, the jokes that were tolerated, the ambitions that were quietly mocked. Your 5 people set the ceiling for what you believe is possible. And here is the dangerous part. They do it without saying a word. They do it simply by being who they are, by what they talk about, by what they celebrate, by what they complain about, by what they never question. You absorb all of it every day. Like a sponge in a bucket. The only question is, what is in the bucket? Now let me give you a framework I have used for years. One that, when you truly understand it, will change how you look at every relationship in your life. There are 3 kinds of association. And every person in your life falls into one of these 3 categories. The first is what I call disassociation. These are the relationships you must end, not with dramedy, but with quiet, firm finality. These are the people who consistently pull you down, who celebrate your failures, who are most comfortable when you are most stuck, who need you to stay small so they do not feel left behind. Now, I know that is hard to hear. Some of those people may be old friends, and some of them may be family. And I am not telling you to be cold or unkind, but I am telling you this: you cannot afford the luxury of a relationship that costs you your future. Then, that is not friendship. That is a slow leak in your tire. You may not notice it for miles, but eventually you will be stranded on the side of the road wondering what happened. The second kind of association is limited association. These are people who are fine in small doses. You enjoy them. You care about them. But, if you are honest with yourself, that spending too much time with them drains your energy or dilutes your focus. You can have lunch. You can celebrate birthdays, but you do not let them become your 5. You do not give them unlimited access to your most valuable resource, your time and your thinking. The third kind is expanded association. And this is where the magic lies. These are the people you need to deliberately, intentionally, sometimes uncomfortably seek out. People who are further along than you. People who think bigger, who have already solved problems you have not yet faced, who hold themselves to a standard you are still reaching for. Here is the discipline. You must spend more time with the third group, even when it feels awkward, even when you feel outmatched, especially then. Because discomfort in the presence of greatness is not a sign you do not belong. It is a sign you are in exactly the right room. Let us talk about money, because this is where the law becomes impossible to ignore. I have observed this for decades, and I have never seen an exception. Your income tends to be the average income of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Not exactly, not to the dollar, but directionally, unmistakably. And before you push back, let me tell you why. It is not because rich people share their money. It is because of something far more powerful. They share their thinking. They share their standards. They share what they consider normal. When you spend time with people who earn significantly more than you, something begins to shift. The conversations are different. The problems they discuss are different. The opportunities they notice are different. The questions they ask are different. And slowly, almost without realizing it, your own questions begin to change. Your own standards begin to rise. What you are willing to accept and what you are no longer willing to tolerate begins to shift. And I remember early in my journey, I spent time with a man who was extraordinarily successful. And I noticed something. He did not talk about money the way I did. I talked about money as something scarce, something to protect, something I was always running out of. He talked about money as something that responded to value, that flowed toward solutions, that multiplied when you understood the principles that governed it. That one shift in a language, in how money was discussed, changed my relationship with it forever. Now think about the 5 people you spend the most time with. Well, what do they say about money? Do they say it is hard to get, that rich people are lucky, or worse, dishonest? Do they celebrate the paycheck and ignore the principle? Do they spend first and save what is left? Because whatever they believe about money, you are absorbing. Every week, every conversation, every offhand comment at dinner. You cannot outrun the financial philosophy of your closest circle. You can only change the circle. Here is something that took me years to fully appreciate. You do not just inherit the income of your 5 people. You inherit their habits, their rituals. They are daily disciplines or their daily indulgences. This happens so gradually that most people never see it. They do not wake up one morning and decide to stop reading. They do not consciously choose to abandon their exercise routine. They do not deliberately decide to spend every evening in front of a screen. It happens slowly, through the gentle, constant pressure of what is a normal in their circle. If your 5 people do not read, you will find yourself reading less. Not because you decided to, but because there is no conversation to sustain it. No one asks what you are reading. No one shares a book that changed their thinking. No one holds you accountable to the discipline of continuous learning. And if your 5 people do not exercise, you will find invitations to the gym replaced by invitations to the couch, not through force, through comfort, through the path of least resistance that every human being naturally gravitates toward when there is no upward pull. Ding. But here is the beautiful reverse of this truth. If your 5 people have strong morning routines, you will develop one. If they read consistently, you will find yourself picking up books. If they speak with optimism and precision, your own language will sharpen. And if they invest in their health or knowledge, their relationships, you will begin to see those things as investments rather than expenses. Habits are contagious. This is not poetry. Then, this is behavioral science. The people around you create what researchers call social norms. The invisible agreements about what is acceptable, what is admirable, and what is expected. And you conform to those norms without ever signing a contract. The question is not whether you are being influenced. You are. Always. The question is whether the influence is lifting you or lowering you. Easy to overlook. And easy to change once you see it clearly. Nanding, now I want to go deeper. Because habits and income are visible. You can measure them. But there is something far more insidious that your 5 people pass to you. Something you cannot see. Something that operates below the surface of every decision you make. Your beliefs. Specifically, your beliefs about what is possible for you. I have met men and women of extraordinary potential who were trapped not by their circumstances, but by the beliefs of the people around them. They had been told, not always in words, but in tone, in reaction, in subtle dismissal, that people like them do not do things like that. That success on a certain scale is for other people. That dreaming too big is a form of arrogance or delusion. And they believed it. Not because they were weak, but because the message came from people they loved and trusted. People whose opinion mattered. Here is the distinction I want you to hold. There is a difference between a person who says, "That is a bold goal. What is your plan?" and a person who says, "Were you sure that is realistic?" Both may love you, but only one is expanding your belief system. The other, with the best of intentions, is quietly reinforcing a ceiling you may have already been trying to break through. The people who changed my life were the ones who took my ambitions seriously before I did, who asked better questions, who expected more from me than I expected from myself. That kind of belief, borrowed from another person, can be the bridge you walk across until your own belief catches up. But the reverse is equally true. Borrowed a doubt, absorbed from people who have given up, who have been disappointed too many times, who have decided that the world does not reward effort. That borrowed doubt is one of the most expensive things you will ever carry. Audit your beliefs. Then ask yourself, where did each one come from? And does the person it came from have the life you want? And then if the answer is no, you owe it to yourself to question what you inherited. If what I have shared so far is landing somewhere real inside you, if you are beginning to see your own circle with new eyes, I want you to do something right now, not later. Right now, subscribe to this channel because this message is part of something larger. Every week, we go deep into the principles that actually move a life forward. Not surface level motivation, not empty encouragement, the real philosophy, the hard truths, the kind of thinking that takes root and grows. And what I am about to share next, the actual process of auditing your associations, ending, and what to do when you cannot simply walk away from the people pulling you down. That is where this message becomes truly personal. That is the part most people are never told. Stay with me. I want to give you a process now. Not a vague idea, a concrete, honest process that I believe every serious person should complete at least once a year. It begins with a simple exercise. Write down the 5 names. The 5 people you spend the most time with. Not who you wish you spent time with. Not who you admire from a distance. The actual 5. The people whose voices you hear most often, whose opinions shape your decisions, whose presence you feel most regularly. Write them down. Now, beside each name, answer these questions. Not quickly, slowly, honestly. When I leave this person, do I feel energized or depleted? Do I feel more possible or less possible? And do they ask me questions that make me think? Or do they fill the silence with complaints? Are they moving forward in their own life, or are they standing still? Do they celebrate my progress, or do they subtly diminish it? Would I want their life, their health, their relationships, their finances, their peace of mind in 5 years? That last question is the one most people avoid because it forces a reckoning. It removes sentiment from the equation and replaces it with something more useful, evidence. You do not judge a person's character by this exercise. You judge the fit. A person can be kind, generous, and deeply good, and still not be the right person to occupy one of your 5 most influential seats. Those are not the same thing. Now, look at your list again. For each person, ask, am I in their 5? And if I am I lifting them, or am I the one holding them back? Because this law works in both directions. You are influencing your 5 just as they are influencing you. That is a responsibility worth taking seriously. The audit is not a judgment, it is a map standing. And once you have the map, you can begin to navigate with intention rather than drift. Keening now, here is where I want to address the objection I know is forming in your mind, because it is a fair one. What about family? What about the people I cannot simply walk away from? What about the colleagues at work I did not choose? What about the community I was born into? This is real, and I will not pretend it is not. You cannot always choose who is physically present in your life, but you can, and you must, choose the weight you give each relationship. You can choose how much of your thinking time, your emotional energy, your planning hours, and your inner dialogue is shaped by each person. Let me give you a distinction. There is a difference between presence and influence. Someone can be present in your life, at the dinner table, at the family gathering, at the office, without having a seat in your inner council, without being one of the 5 voices that shape your beliefs, your standards, and your decisions. The way you do this is through selective exposure. You limit the depth of certain conversations. You redirect topics that pull you toward complaint or cynicism. You protect your inner life the way a good farmer protects his best soil, not with hostility, but with intention. And simultaneously, you seek out the expanded associations. You find them in books, in seminars, in communities of people who are pursuing what you are pursuing, in mentors, some of whom you may never meet in person, but whose thinking you absorb through their words, their recordings, their philosophy. I have had mentors I never shook hands with, men and women whose books sat on my shelf and whose ideas lived in my thinking every day. That is a legitimate form of expanded association. Do not underestimate it. You cannot always change who is in the room, but you can always change who is in your mind. I want to talk about something that rarely gets discussed, because most people, when they think about toxic associations, they think about obvious negativity. The complainer, the cynic, Ming, the person who tears others down. But the most dangerous association is not the obviously toxic one. The most dangerous association is the comfortable one. The comfortable circle is made up of people who are good, decent, friendly, people you genuinely enjoy, people who mean you no harm, and people who, without any malice whatsoever, are quietly confirming that where you are right now is good enough. They are not pulling you down. They are simply not pulling you up. And in the absence of an upward pull, gravity does the rest. I think of it like a hot air balloon. The ropes that hold it to the ground are not the enemy. They serve a purpose. But if you want to rise, you must untee them one by one. And sometimes the ropes that are hardest to untee are the ones attached to people who love you and want you safe. Safe is not the same as good. Comfortable is not the same as right. And the people who make you feel most at ease may, without knowing it, be the ones making it easiest for you to stay exactly where you are. Here is the test. Ding, when you share a new idea with your circle, a bigger goal, a bolder plan, a new direction, what is the first response? Is it curiosity? Is it, tell me more? How would that work? Or is it, are you sure? That seems risky. What if it does not work out? Both responses come from people who care about you. But only one response is expanding your world. The other is gently and lovingly shrinking it. You must learn to distinguish between people who love you and people who believe in you. The very best relationships are both ending, but if you must choose for the purpose of your 5, choose the ones who believe in what you are capable of becoming. Now, I want to talk about the part that requires the most courage. Not the leaving, though that is hard. The H building. The deliberate, intentional construction of a new circle. Most people wait to be chosen. They wait for successful people to notice them. They wait for the invitation. And while they wait, the years pass. Here is what I have learned. Successful people, people who are genuinely building something, who are serious about their growth, they are not looking for someone to impress them. They are looking for someone who is serious. Someone who brings energy, curiosity, and value to the relationship. Someone who asks good questions and then actually applies the answers. You do not need to be at their level to earn their attention. You need to be moving. A person in motion is always more interesting than a person standing still, regardless of where they are on the path. So how do you build it? Deliberately, step by step. And first, identify who you want to learn from. Not abstractly, specifically. Who has the life, the business, the health, the relationships you are working toward? Find those people. Read everything they have written. Listen to everything they have recorded. Attend the events where they speak. Write to them. Ask a single, specific, thoughtful question. Not to impress, aimed and to learn. Second, become the kind of person worth knowing. This is the part people skip. They want access to great people without doing the work of becoming great themselves. But the law of association works both ways. Great people are also protecting their five. They are also selective. The way you earn a seat in someone's circle is by bringing something worth bringing. A perspective, a skill, an energy, a seriousness of purpose. Third, be patient. The right circle is not built in a season. It is built the way a forest is built, one tree at a time over years through consistent tending. But here is the promise. Ending once you have even one person in your life who genuinely believes in your potential and holds you to a higher standard, everything changes. One is enough to start. Funding a one expanded association can rewrite the trajectory of a life. I want to talk about time, because this is where the principle becomes truly staggering. The impact of your associations is not linear. It is compounding, like interest in a bank account. And I mean that precisely. A small daily influence, sustained over years, produces results that would seem impossible if you tried to achieve them all at once. One conversation that shifts your thinking by 2 degrees does not seem like much, but 2 degrees sustained over 10 years puts you in a completely different country than where you started. I have seen this in the lives of people I have known and studied, ending men, women who, by any external measure, did not have exceptional advantages, no inherited wealth, no prestigious education, no extraordinary talent, but they made one decision consistently over years to surround themselves with people who were better than them in the areas that mattered most. And the compounding effect of that decision transformed every dimension of their lives. Here is the reverse, and I want you to hear this clearly. The compound effect of the wrong circle is equally powerful and equally relentless. A small daily erosion of your standards, a small daily confirmation that average is acceptable, a small daily absence of challenge or inspiration. Being over 10 years, that compounds into a life that looks nothing like the one you once imagined for yourself, and yet you cannot point to a single day when you chose it. That is the true danger. Not a dramatic fall, a quiet drift, the kind that happens while you are busy being comfortable. The question you must answer is this: in 10 years, when you look back at the compound effect of the associations you are choosing today, will you be grateful? Then, or will you be grieving the life that was possible? That question is worth sitting with for as long as it takes to answer honestly. I want to close with something I believe with every part of my being. You did not come this far through whatever struggle, whatever disappointment, whatever season of difficulty you have walked through, to hand your future to someone else's limitations. You did not survive your hardest years to spend your best years being averaged down by people who stopped growing. You were made for more than that. Not because the world owes you more, but because you have the capacity for more. And that capacity is either being developed or being diminished. Every single day, by the company you keep. Here is the final truth I want to leave with you. The people around you are not just influencing your future. In a very real sense, they are your future, because the future is built from decisions, and decisions are built from beliefs, and beliefs are built from the daily, invisible, relentless input of the people closest to you. Change the input, change the beliefs, change the decisions, change the future. It is that simple, and it is that hard. Simple because the principle requires no special talent, no inherited advantage, no lucky break. It requires only a decision made clearly, held firmly, and acted upon consistently. Hard because the decision will cost you something. It may cost you comfort. It may cost you familiar faces. It may cost you the approval of people who preferred the version of you that asked less of itself. But here is what I know. Every person who has ever built a life worth admiring paid that cost. And every one of them, without exception, has told me the same thing: it was worth it. Not just for what they gained, but for who they became in the process. Because ultimately that is what this is about. Not the income, not the habits, not even the beliefs. It is about who you are becoming. Day by day, gun and season by season, 5 people at a time. Choose those 5 people the way you would choose the soil for your most important seed. With care, with honesty, with the long view in mind. And then tend that circle the way a good farmer tends his land. With patience, with discipline, and with the quiet, unshakable faith that what you plant today, you will harvest in due season. Then your future is not decided by the economy. It is not decided by your past. It is not decided by luck or circumstance or the year you were born, right? And it is decided right now today by the 5 people you choose to walk beside. Choose wisely, choose deliberately, and never stop choosing. If you have stayed with me through this entire message, if you have done the honest work of asking yourself these questions, then you already know you are not the kind of person who settles for surface level thinking. Subscribe to this channel, because this is what we do here. Every week, we go into the philosophy that changes lives from the inside out. The principles that most people have heard and few have truly lived. And if this message has shifted something in you today, if you are looking at your circle with new eyes, leave a comment below. Tell who is the one person in your life who has lifted you higher than you could have gone alone. I rate everyone. And your answer may be exactly what someone else needs to hear. You came into this message having heard the idea. You leave it having understood the law. Now, the only question that remains is the one only you can answer. Who are your 5? Thanks for watching. The end screen has more videos in the same world. Pick one and keep going. And thanks for being here. Pick whichever video on the end screen calls to you and keep building.